Hello everybody and welcome back to RPG Horror Stories. Let me start things off by saying that we are going to have a slightly bit different of a video today. I only have one story, but it is extremely long and somewhat satisfying. I also want to tell you guys that I have Discord, Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube all up and running. Links will be in the description. Now, that being said, roll the post. Player puts too much religion into a D&D character and pushes it onto the party. It comes with a content warning of suicide, toxic relationships, and angels? Well, let's roll the post. I'm here thanks to Crit Crab and Den of the Drake. I know I could have handled this better, and I honestly wish I knew more of what I did now. This all took place in a month's time, about 5 years or more now ago, so details are a little blurry for me. We were, and still are, very excited to play Dungeons & Dragons at all, as we all have had a hard time meeting up. This was one of the few times during high school we were able to have free time playing together, including the Ranger, who could only stay for a limited time, which made the entire game a little faster than I would have liked. I really wanted to make sure everyone could enjoy the session, and had a lot of handouts for everyone to enjoy. I feel like I should say this before getting too far into this. It's my 4th time ever DMing, and my 5th time playing Dungeons & Dragons in general. For Rogue, Cleric, and Sorcerer, this was their 4th ever game, and newbies first. During this time of my life, I was dealing with some very heavy personal issues. I had been going through a very toxic, heavy relationship and a toxic home life, just to name a few things. I will be changing names in the story to keep everyone private. Characters are the DM, myself, Gabriel, Paladin, the newbie, the Bard, Ranger, Cleric, and Sorcerer. Let's get into the story. After getting a serious case of the Dungeons & Dragons bug, I had gotten my friends together and formed a D&D group of 3 players, and myself as the DM, since no one else wanted to do it. We could only play on days when the school let us off early, as our Ranger couldn't get a ride to the sessions otherwise. The rest of the group agreed that 2 players wouldn't go really well, so skipping ahead, Bard had approached me with Gabriel in tow. Bard had told me that after telling stories to Gabriel that he wanted to play, and I agreed to let him play in a one-shot we had rapidly made up. I was a little confused as to the sudden change of heart from Gabriel, as not too long ago I had asked him if he wanted to give a D&D a shot, only to be cut off mid-sessions. So I was excited to get someone else into Dungeons & Dragons. So I got this email from him and told him what the one-shot was about. To draft a few ideas for what character he wanted to play for the one-shot in a doc, and I'd help him make a more polished version. Remember, Gabriel and Bard walked off to start talking, though I overheard the Bard telling Gabriel that he could make an evil character as long as it looks like a good character. I remember feeling hurt over this, as I know Bard wanted to play an evil character, while everyone else wanted to play in a good campaign. During the following days, I would go on to spend all my free time working on both the campaign and preparing the one-shots, handouts, and checking in on the doc with Gabriel's character. It stayed blank for a few weeks until we had about 2 weeks from the session. I figured putting useful links to the handbooks would be helpful and included the instructions just in case he forgot. I should warn, Gabriel is from a very religious family. If you have issues with Christianity or angelic themes, please be careful as we carry on. There are no faces! Gabriel's first character was Arduous, an underage character. He had a rule at the table that no one could or would play underage characters, and this was also told to Gabriel. Arduous is a human who is an Oath of Devotion paladin. He is a very headstrong and devoted religious character who refuses to submit to any foul evil or weakness. He strongly refuses any blanket as he states, "My love for both my God and my country shall keep me warm in even the coldest of nights." Now Adruas, he loves being in a good conversation, but only ones he isn't expected to join in on. Adruas's missions are his hobbies, his life, his job. He is driven by devotion and a strong longing for his home where he can await his betrothed. For some reason, the god of life himself declared that Adruas and his beloved shall be betrothed from birth for some greater divine reason in his very church. Now, this divine mission that the god of life had given him also included him to become a promised paladin where he and his beloved shall be returned to the church and become trained in the ways of faith and how to be a paladin at the age of fucking 10 years old. What the fuck? What? A 10-year-old paladin? Yeah, sure! Yeah, no, that sounds fucking good. When Adruas turned 14, he and his betrothed were sent to the forest to be trained under his very own guardian angel. His training also included being sent on various missions. During their training, they discovered they were betrothed to each other at birth. But during their time at the church, they fell madly in love. He and his betrothed were banished from the woods until he rids himself of darkness. They shall know when they have done so. Their angels will tell them. Gabriel was also a fan of homebrewing concepts, and I thought I should share it. Adruas will not talk a word about his missions, as it includes secrets not meant for the average man, such as future events he's been told about, including how he will die, and how angels cannot give their names as it can be used to track down the other paladins. Since Adruas was trained by angels who taught him magic and swordplay, the very god of life itself guides his sword in battle. Though it will only work if he has repented himself of all his sins. One of the ways Gabriel tried to work this in was, as he levels up, he will become easier and easier for him until he won't need to roll for the god to guide his sword. Adruas is forbidden to speak a word of this, as this is an ultimate secret of the paladins of the god of life. This one shot I had in mind was a more serious tone of them going to a masquerade party where they had to discover the person they were sent to take care of. Every time I tried to make a suggestion or ask a question, Gabriel would get angry at me. He would talk about Christianity as a lot of reasoning as to why he chose what he did. You could only get in contact with him by leaving notes on the documents, as he could only use the internet during school time and couldn't get in contact with me through other means. His next character was Nigel from Landstalker, but renamed Septimetrudo, and was an 870-year-old elven rogue. The character after that was a kobold named Kryto Vandarius, who is also a paladin of the Oath of Devotion. Since this kobold was both based on a character from another franchise, John Barry, it was later written into an 8-page front-to-back, no-line-skip, fully fleshed-out backstory of how his character was 3/4 of the way from getting all the ingredients for the ultimate sandwich. It was the final character idea he submitted to me before one shot. Though he did do the 8 pages of background for the Tom Era and rewrote Adruas. Now, this new version of Adruas is what makes me even more uncomfortable. I am alright with religion. You believe whatever you want to be in. That's perfectly alright, but I do not like being forced to read straight quotes from the Bible for Gabriel to describe the core of his character to me. During this time of my life, I was struggling heavily with suicidal thoughts. I was not in the best mental state. What I am about to quote here from his own words from the document I have backed up. Because it is a stewardship, suicide is unacceptable. Suicide attacks do not count as dying in the line of duty, because you are still assuming the right to choose when you die. This was one of the final straws I had with him, before we even started that one shot. During this time, Bard was listening to what I was telling Ranger, and oftentimes told me to just let Gabriel do as he pleased. Though I was not comfortable with this behavior, and it was honestly uncomfortable. I was strong and did not know how to handle it. A lot of the things Gabriel was telling me, like this one, I understand this is not Christianity, but human nature is human nature, and when someone acts like they love others out of trying to serve God, they grow to love them because they have chosen to do what's right, and because of their love of God spreads to them. This was just making me uncomfortable. I wish I had stopped talking and stopped reading the big blurb he wrote me in the documents after I read the suicide line. He continues to talk more and more about the Bible through stories, quotes, and spoiling Kingdom Hearts for me. A series he knew I loved deeply, but couldn't afford to get any of the games for. At this point, I was already shutting down and barely talked to anyone. I knew Bard would tell me just what happened and it's fine. Gabriel was Bard's friend, but I and the other players were friends with Bard. During a bus ride to the other school, I was still in not the best mental state, as my mental health really took a dive from dealing with Gabriel. I just wanted to get the one-shot done and stop playing D&D. That day, he sat next to me and Sorcerer stood next to me. Gabriel stood next to us since Bard wasn't there today. Gabriel was asking me questions about morals in D&D. I don't remember the exact thing. Would it be wrong of a 16-year-old girl drink alcohol? I asked him not to have this talk with me right now, as I honestly was not in a good state. I'm not sure why, but Gabriel decided to bring up America nuking Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I told him not to bring it up. He tried to comfort me by saying, "Hey, if it makes you feel better, we were aiming for a more populated area." I just shut down after that and walked out of that conversation. I should have just canceled the one shot right there, but I didn't want to be selfish and ruin the game for my players. So I hosted it anyways. The entire day, I was dreading it. I had a time limit to stay in so that way Ranger could still play. I had to make Gabriel's player sheet, so I used Address. I had everyone's handout prepared and even had item cards ready. I had the players pick out what masks they wanted as they entered the manor. I honestly loved the one-shot's theme and story setup, but I just wish Gabriel wasn't there. Everyone had their masks on and traveled with the manor as a group. They were excited. Ranger was quiet, and I tried my best to have NPCs interact with him and make him feel included. Throughout the game, Gabriel repeatedly called my name while I was talking to the other player. It was really hard to focus and tell my players what the outcome of their roles was. I did tell Gabriel to wait a moment and not to do that, but he refused to listen when I asked. After I finished describing the outcome of my other players, I answered Gabriel's question. This would continue non-stop throughout the session. The players ran across a scorpion-masked fortune teller who wanted to tell the party's fortunes for a good laugh. Before she could read anyone's fortunes, Gabriel stepped up and smacked the fortune teller's crystal ball to the ground, screaming how this was blasphemy. I had to tell him no. No, he did not do that. I did not like telling him no. But if I didn't, it would have been much worse. The scene goes as planned. Players get their fortunes read and seems to be happy about the results as it precludes background hints for the night's events. Eventually, they make their way to the main hall where the masquerade is in full swing. The bard wanted to go to the poker table and the party follows for a good time. Drinking and laughing as Gabriel stands from the table so hard, the chair falls over. He walks away from the table declaring he wants to go looking for a big bad evil guy who he wants to defeat solo. None of the players knew about a big bad evil guy. He was simply a party invited to. So I had to tell Gabriel his character did not know that. So he resigns to standing with his back towards the table. The bard and sorcerer attempt to get an NPC to spill the beans by giving them one of the drinks they didn't trust. Sorcerer attempted to carefully pass the drink to bard, only to mess up in classic D&D fashion and bang his hand, carrying the drink into the underside of the table. Luckily though, the bard was able to calm the situation down and they managed to pull it off. Gabriel declares his character storms over there to smack the drink from their hand for daring to try to drug somebody. I told him that this character was too far to hear or see any of this, as he did state he walked off and had his back to the table. Two players' plan went down accordingly, and they gave her the drink. It took time to take effect. At one point, an NPC walked away from the table. Gabriel stormed up to the poor lass and started threatening her on the grounds of him being a paladin, and she needed to tell him everything! Unfortunately for her, she's just a simple partygoer who was terrified of this man screaming, yelling in her face. The sorcerer tries to calm down the situation and gets Gabriel away from the terrified missus. When the drinks did take effect, NPCs were passing out. While the ranger was struggling to fight off the effects of the drink he had, the mask the guest was wearing slowly started to turn the guest into what their mask was. As the party was role-playing, Gabriel started screaming at the party and telling them to knock it off. Just as the host was revealing himself to be a demon in disguise, I had to end the one-shot as the ranger had to leave. Gabriel and Bard wanted me to keep going, but I decided on taking the out as I had to drive both the ranger and sorcerer back home. That is how that one-shot ended. On the long drive back, I was talking to the ranger and sorcerer about how they felt the one-shot went. The sorcerer was angry and the ranger was livid. The ranger wasn't the type of person to get angry, and here he was. Angry. Unfortunately, that was the last game we got to play with the ranger, as he couldn't come anymore. I still hope he's doing alright wherever he is now. We miss you, bud. That was the last time we had Gabriel in D&D. That was my horror story. Hopefully it wasn't too poorly written. I did post this at 1 AM. I might fix this up tomorrow, I'm not sure. I'm just glad to have it off my chest. Who knows? Maybe I'll tell you guys the story of my first time playing. So here's what I have to say on this. This has a lot to digest, but there's a couple of points that you can really think about. Dungeons & Dragons require Session 0. It's where you set out the expectations of the campaign and everything, and they did not have this, I guarantee you. And that's partially on the player of Adruis, Gabriel. He just didn't fill out his character sheets for months at a time and wait until 2 weeks afterwards to make an 8-page long backstory that he can't really use because the DM was already probably planning a party type setting that everyone else was just about ready for, and Gabriel was a dick the entire time. But either way, no matter if it's a one-shot, Session 0, campaign, Session 0, just 5 fucking games, Session 0. No matter what, Session 0 is the most important thing you can do to ensure the satisfaction of you and your players. And it's honestly not that hard to do. You can actually do Session 0 inside of Discord. You don't even have to have a voice chat. You can do that using the text channels. You can do that by text messaging. There's a million ways to set up Session 0. There's a million ways to conduct it. You don't always have to be in person. The other thing is that Gabriel is being raised by hard-lined Christian fundamentalists. As far as I can tell. Listen, I live in the South. I'm living around Christians. I can't fucking stand them. I don't give a shit what your magic fucking book says, Dave. I'm not sucking your cock. As far as I have been able to experience, hard-lined Christian fundamentalists treat Dungeons & Dragons like it's a devil summoning ritual. It is literally that stereotype to the T. So Gabriel probably was expecting fucking demon summoning and all that bullshit, and then when he got it, he started freaking out. So, I mean, good for him, but still, it fucks over everyone else. Much love, stay sexy, and I'll see you guys in the next video. And listen, if you made it this far, if you made it to the end of the video, you have big dick energy. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye-bye!